Welcome, everybody, to the American Space Museum. I'm Marquette. We're so glad you're with us to stay curious today. Today, we're going to talk about a launch that occurs tomorrow, April 24th, 1990. That, of course, is the launch of the Hubble Space Telescope by our Space Transportation System shuttle number 31. That, of course, being Discovery deployed the Hubble Telescope. And going to say hi to Selvin Trotter, who's manning the board there. And Selvin, I don't see my picture on my cheat screen in front of me. That's why I'm looking up high. There we are. Okay, now I can see my script there a little bit. Yeah, the Hubble Telescope, we're going to talk about the telescope, some of its discoveries, why it has been one of the most amazing inventions of mankind. But the man, Edwin Hubble, is quite a fascinating person. And 100 years ago, Edwin Hubble revolutionized how we thought of the universe because 100 years ago, in 1910 or so, we thought that the Milky Way galaxy was the entire universe, okay? And then the studies that Hubble did with a 100-inch telescope on Mount Wilson outside of Los Angeles called the Hooker Telescope. He started taking pictures, which was very new back 100 years ago, and they discovered that one of the closer nebula to our Milky Way galaxy was actually a galaxy in its own right, that being the Andromeda galaxy. So once they discovered this other island universe, so to speak, of billions and billions of stars, it was realized how insignificant man was here on the third planet from the sun in a galaxy that is in a universe filled with billions and billions of galaxies. But interesting that 100 years ago we thought the Milky Way was the entire universe, and now we know that the Milky Way is just one of billions and billions and billions of galaxies with billions and billions of stars in this thing we call the universe. So stay tuned for a great little quick show today as we got the cosmic reef behind us here, which was the incredible image that the Hubble Telescope released on its 30th anniversary was the official moniker of this, and we were kind of involved in that. We'll tell you here in a little bit at our American Space Museum. But we also want you to tomorrow. Let's see here. How are we going to go here, Selvin? Yeah, there we go. Tomorrow we got a great guest. Kevin Brown is going to talk about, yep, you see the picture there? The Delta Clipper reusable spaceship of the 1990s. How many remember that? Raise your hand out there. I know Tommy Usiak's raising his, probably Mark, maybe Dave Stange. Certainly Doug Forrest has heard about the Delta Clipper of the 1990s. Yeah, 30 years ago, we were Pete Conrad, the moonwalking astronaut and Gemini astronaut, had his stake in this, and it was way ahead of its time. And Kevin was an automated systems research and development engineer at the time, and when he told me he had something to do with that, I said, Kevin, come on board and let's just do a program on that. As Kevin was part of our future panel at Shuttle Fest, he's shown there. He works for All Points that has a division called Space Prep that is going to build a huge facility out at Kennedy Space Center to prep and bring prep things going to and from space, including the moon. So looking forward to you, Kevin Brown, being on Stay Curious tomorrow and talk about this, something that maybe you don't even know about from 30 years ago, a really solid triad reusable spacecraft that I'm pretty sure Kevin will say was way ahead of its time in engineering. So, of course, every month we love to celebrate the shuttles of the month. Look at those beautiful shuttles in the month of April. 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 16 of them there. All unique missions, including STS-1 in the middle there, April 12th, the first launch of a shuttle in 1981. And on and on. We've highlighted a few of these, but as we've been busy with putting Shuttle Fest behind and all the other events we have going here, we've not counted all of them off like sometimes we do because there's so many of them. But we're going to highlight the one on the bottom left there, STS-31, launched on April 24th, 1990. And it was launched by this crew. Well, there's the patch. Let's just go to the Human Spaceflight Mission Patch book from Aerographics. That is my resource of all patches. STS-31 insignia features the Hubble Space Telescope in its observing configuration against a background of the universe it will study. The cosmos includes a stylistic depiction of galaxies in recognition of the contribution made by Sir Edwin Hubble to our understanding of the nature of galaxies and the expansion of the universe. And that expansion of the universe now is being challenged by the Webb telescope. It is in honor of Hubble's work that this great observatory in space bears his name. The space shuttle trails a spectrum symbolic of both the redshift of observations that were so important to Hubble's work and the new information that will be obtained with the HST. Encircling the scene are the names of the crew members. So here are the crew members. This was launched April 24th, 1990 at 8:31 a.m. It was a 5-day quick mission because that was the main mission, was to deploy this. And look at these astronauts we have there in their military garb or civilian garb in the case that you were not in the military. And that includes left to right there. And where's my notes on this? Did I leave those over there? No, I didn't. Maybe I stuck them under here. I know the astronauts by heart. Just wanted to get a few details out. You got Lawrence Schreiber. All right, this is his second of third flight, his first command. He's in the middle there with his Air Force uniform on. You've got Marine on the left, Charlie Bolden, his second pilot stint. He went on to command two more space shuttles. Behind the lady, of course, is Kathy Sullivan, Navy, and she's got her Navy garb on. This was her second and third flights. And then you've got Bruce McCandless, famous for the spacewalk under the MMU. There's Bruce. Believe he's also a Navy man there on his second and third flight. And then Steve Hawley, a civilian, not a military guy, a true astrophysicist, astronomer, going up with the telescope that he certainly was cherished to be part of. And Steve Hawley had, this was his second of 5 space flights in space. So an experienced crew there to take up an important mission. And this Hubble Space Telescope shown there with some of the technicians around it as it was warehoused for almost 5 years, almost a 10-year delay in launching this thing. And then, of course, 1990, it got being launched in 1990, it got caught up in the Challenger disaster of 1986, so it got pushed back and back and back. In fact, STS-31 was the 35th mission of the Space Shuttle program, and the mission before it was called STS-36, a Defense Department mission. In fact, they launched STS-36, 32, 33, and 34 ahead of 31, okay? So the numbers really get jumbled up, and you can't, you got to really concentrate to remember the order that they're in. So I think that's Mikey Haddad on the bottom there. I think that's where I got this picture. But there's the Hubble in the background where it was stored and then finally put in the orbiting and processing facility at Kennedy Space Center. Well, they got it up there, and once they got it up into a very high orbit, the highest orbit at the time for any shuttle, 380 miles high, almost 100 miles, 150 miles higher than the normal shuttle of 200 and some. That created some large-scale geographic features that they could see that wasn't apparent from lower orbits, and they recorded those with 2 IMAX cameras, resulted in the 1994 IMAX film Destiny in Space. That was the main task of these astronauts, to do that. Many of you have seen that. So Discovery orbited the Earth 80 times for about 5 days and then came back. A very successful mission landing out at Edwards Air Force Base. There is the deployment from the Canada Arm, one of the most iconic images of the space age. There you have the Hubble actually has a barn door covering it to prohibit from any of the exhaust or anything around the shuttle that could get in on the mirror, which is at the very bottom. We'll explain that here in a second. And so 4 different times we went up and serviced it. Of course, the first one was the mirror that had been ground inaccurately. That was quite a faux pas. After a 10-year project and being in storage for 5, they found out the mirror wouldn't focus right. And there was a flaw in the actual manufacturing of the mirror. Now, that mirror was 90 inches across, about 9 feet. Okay, there was a duplicate mirror made at the same time. We theorized that that mirror was turned over to the Defense Department and used as a spy satellite. The cutaway of the Hubble telescope that you see so often, it does not have a lens at the front like these binoculars do, for instance. It's not that type of telescope. It is a telescope that called a refractor. It is a reflector. So it has a mirror at the bottom of it, and right there's the mirror, and all encased, and the light travels down to the mirror and then goes through a series of experiments, cameras, and so forth that are called the suite of instruments that were capturing the images from space and then refining them. Of course, the Hubble needed an antenna at the bottom to relay its information. 2 antennas actually were used, one for speedier transmissions and the other for slower transmissions. And there's Robert Law. Hello, Dundee, Scotland's resident Robert Law in front of the Hubble Telescope out at the Kennedy Visitors Complex. Think of you often, Robert, when I'm looking up at the Hubble image up there as we're standing in line, the Hubble model, I mean, as we're standing in line to get autographs out of Kennedy Visitors Complex at the Atlantis building there. So, Robert, looking forward to seeing you back in the States. And I know he's anxious to get here, a usual visitor to America once every other year or something like that. And he'll be back in the States, and we'll have him sitting right here beside me one day. So thank you for your support in telling other people to stay curious with you. And there's Jim Newman, who's one of our favorite astronauts. He was a Hubble repair mission astronaut on STS-109. And there he is in the picture. He's hanging 10. He's a big surfer, and there he is hanging 10 on a platform there as he's moved around on the robotic arm. Great guy. So we look up into the sky and we see things that we look back in time. And that is the amazing thing about astronomy, is even when you look at the sun, you're looking back in time. The sun is so far away at 93 million miles that it takes light 8.5 minutes to hit the Earth. So the sun could blow up and we wouldn't know it for 8.5 minutes. We'd have a pretty good idea it was going to blow up because of everything that was happening beforehand if that happened. But that's not going to happen for at least 4 billion more years, so you don't need to worry about it. But all the twinkling stars in the sky, there's a story behind every one of them. And you know what? There's probably 5 or 6 planets around every single star in the sky. The more we know that the Hubble tells us, the less we really know about our universe. Well, here's a comparison of the Webb telescope on the left, because that's been functioning now for 2.5 years, and the Hubble telescope on the right. Completely different concepts where they did not have to encase the mirror that you see, the gold mirror of the Webb, into a cylinder because nothing was going to get near it once it reached a orbit of about 1 million miles from Earth, and I'll show you where that's at, called the Lagrange point, astronomers call it. It's a point between the Earth and the Moon where the Earth and the Moon's gravity and the sun balances out, and it just kind of hangs in that one little area, and 1 million miles away from Earth, 4 times the distance of the Moon. And so you didn't need to cover it up because we were never going to visit it again and have exhaust from spacecraft or something hurt it. Now, they have had impacts from meteoroids in space or cosmic debris. But so let's, another comparison. There's the Hubble's 9-foot mirror versus the segments of the James Webb that I think ends up to be about 23 feet in diameter. And of course, there's a human to scale. Each one of those honeycomb mirrors almost gathers as much light as the Hubble did itself. All right, and the hole in the middle is for the instruments to be at, because the light is gathered and then the light is bounced back through that hole to the instruments by what's called a secondary mirror. That's why you have a big, on the Webb on the left, that's that structure on the left, is another mirror that is bouncing all that light to a point into the instrument panel. So now you know about that. Of course, the Hubble orbiting the Earth for 34 years, starting, is actually deployed, launched April 25th, 4th, and then the 25th is when they deployed it. And that L2 is what they call the Lagrange point out there. All right. So very, very interesting science that to even figure all this out. Well, one of the most iconic images of the Hubble telescope is called the Pillars of Creation there. Another fabulous, fabulous image. And here is the Pillars of Creation on the left by the Hubble's best view, and on the right by the Webb telescope's view. And the first thing you say is, whoa, the Webb telescope's looking through some of those clouds. And you bet your bottom dollar, we didn't know these stars even existed in the Hubble image, as famous as that was. That's what the Webb is. It's infrared. It is getting the signatures of heat, and it can go through the cold clouds, just like cutting butter through with a hot knife, all right? But here's an analogy I like to make that I've seen the technology for the law enforcement, that an infrared camera can look through your home, all right? And if a policeman wants to know, is a burglary suspect escape into that next door neighbor's house, they can actually put an infrared camera on that house and see the heat of the human body in there. And of course, everything else that has heat, like the TV and stove and so forth. But you'd actually see human beings moving around by the heat signature. And this is used a lot by aerial surveillance and aerial searches by the law enforcement communities. So, but Hubble can give us details of visual things that we see, but the Webb can give us detail through those visual things from the heat signatures. Again, this is the Ring Nebula, famous Ring Nebula in Lyra the Harp, a summertime object. On the left is the Hubble's best image of it, and on the right is the Webb, giving you different structures and different things that scientists can understand. Well, there I am with Jim Webb. I just thought I'd throw that in there. We like him a lot. He comes out to Space Center 2 or 3 times. And there he is talking about the Hubble Deep Field. And what he's showing you here is that the Hubble telescope took pictures at 6 months apart of the same part of the sky that we thought was completely empty, that there'd be nothing in this little yellow box there. And when the images came down, my gosh, there were thousands of galaxies, thousands and thousands of galaxies. The only thing that's in a star in this image is this right there that's got the bright hex lights from the secondary mirror of the Hubble that captures the light from the mirror and shoots it into the instruments. But every one of those is a galaxy. And it was incredible, because when Earth-based telescopes looked in this region, they saw nothing there. So everywhere we look, the universe is teeming with galaxies. And as we look back in time with the Webb, we see galaxies from the beginning of the Big Bang, which the Big Bang is also being questioned, along with some things that Mr. Edwin Hubble came up with. They're not being questioned, they're being massaged into new understanding of our universe. Well, here is the man, Edwin Powell Hubble, born November 20th, 1889, in Marshfield, Missouri. All right. His family moved to Wheaton, Illinois soon after his birth, but he was raised as a Midwesterner. He mostly got good grades, but he was over 6 feet tall, and his athletic prowess was equal to his intellectual abilities. In fact, in 1906, he won 7 first places and a third place in a high school track meet and set a record for high jump at that track meet in Illinois. He was a fisherman, a basketball player. He was an amateur boxer. Now, most of y'all thinking about astronomers as being nerds with the glasses and your kind of Big Bang Theory sitcom impression of nerds. This was a man's man type of a nerd, okay? He loved athletics. He loved boxing, and he excelled in all of them. So he went to the University of Chicago and got his degree in mathematics, physics, and philosophy. And then he was one of the first Rhodes Scholars at Oxford University in Cambridge, England. So he went over to England, and over there he adopted a British attitude, let's say. He began. He was very affected by British mannerisms and clothing, and when he came back to America, so his friends that were Midwesterners from the University of Chicago and so forth, they start talking to him. He's adopted a British accent. He's always rocking a pipe, and the derbies, the clothing of the Brits. He really embraced it for the rest of his life. All right. He also was a high school basketball coach in New Albany, Indiana, and practiced half-heartedly law in Louisville, Kentucky, after getting a degree in that. So kind of moving around, finding what would be his niche, but it was definitely astronomy. And so here he is in his athletic garb as a basketball player. Believe he is in the center there. All right. In fact, the 1903 champions of the Big Ten was Chicago, with him playing that basketball in the 1906-1907 era. Okay. Well, he got hired as an astronomer out at the Hooker Telescope. Hooker Telescope was the biggest telescope of the time. This is a 100-inch mirror on the bottom. That cage and everything is a structure to hold the secondary mirror and scientific instruments that would be pointed at different things in the sky. And photography was becoming a great breakthrough in the 1910 time that he was working out here. So with this instrument, Hubble realized that the Andromeda Nebula was not a gaseous nebula. It was another oasis of stars. And this was the big headlines in the New York Times. Another universe seen by astronomer. Dr. Hubble describes mass of celestial bodies 700,000 light years away. That was the Andromeda Galaxy. Now, in the fall, you can go out and see the Andromeda Galaxy with your own eye, and it's not 7,000 light years away. It is over 2 million light years away, all right? It's the furthest object you can see with your naked eye, because come out with me on an autumn night, and I'll put a laser light pointer on it there to show you that you can see this object that's over 2 million light years away. And in fact, the Andromeda Galaxy, bigger than our Milky Way galaxy, they are gravitationally attracted to each other, and in a billion years or so may pass through each other. And that happens all the time, as we've seen from Hubble and now Webb examples of stars, galaxies colliding with each other. So this was quite a big thing, like I'm emphasizing over and over, that 100 years ago we thought the entire universe was the stars that we see in our backyard. And no, there's so much more that we don't understand. So the 200-inch Hale Observatory was quite a breakthrough, a little over 100 years ago or less. And there's Hubble inside the cage, they called it. The mirror is at the very bottom. You can see it at the very bottom, the glassy looking structure. There's the 200-inch Hale telescope mirror. Now I'm here to tell you that this 100-inch Hooker telescope and this telescope, there are backyard astronomers. One of my friends, Mark Poole in India Atlantic, takes pictures that are better than what Hubble took with the Hale telescope back 100 years ago. And that's just how technology is leap bounds and bounds with the digital photography, and they stack images, take one 30-second exposure and take another 50 of them and stack them on each other like you had 50, like you had a 24-hour exposure or minute exposure, I'm saying there. So there's Hubble, very classic picture of him inside the Hale telescope up there. Well, with the Hale telescope, and he discovered all kinds of galaxies and then started categorizing them and then started analyzing them with what we call the red shift. All right. He noticed that through his spectroscopic pictures of everything, the galaxies and other objects, that the spectrum, the sort of the fingerprint of light coming from any star or galaxies called a spectrum, that was shifting to the red. The red was getting longer and longer. And he wondered, as he looked at objects, and he realized the objects with the longest red shift must be further away. And then he discovered that everywhere he looked, in every direction in the universe, north, south, east, west, that everything seemed to be moving away from each other. And they were moving away from each other at a rate of speed that seemed to be very consistent. And it became known as the Hubble constant. And the Hubble constant became another bedrock of physics, just like Albert Einstein's E equals mc squared. Energy equals mass times the speed of light squared. And these basic fundamentals of physics back 100 years ago remain unchallenged and just part of the astrophysics Bible, so to speak, until now, when the Webb telescope has found some little bit of quirks here and there. The Hubble constant is being challenged, that it's not as constant as maybe they thought it was, and that maybe part of the universe is moving away from each other while part of it is moving towards each other. So these are things that comes with the scientific knowledge, and you put that new knowledge with what has been decided before and analyze it in a way of not necessarily changing the laws of physics, but revising how we understand these laws of physics work as we're more involved in just a gigantic universe with crazy stuff going on all over. Well, one thing Hubble also figured out was that galaxies are in different shapes and sizes. Now, he wasn't alone. There was a whole slew of great astronomers that were riding his coattails and making these discoveries. But Hubble's classification scheme had on the left like a tuning fork. And the handle of the tuning fork are round galaxies or oval galaxies that look like star clusters, all right? But they're groups of larger areas of stars. We don't know how it evolved. And then you have a group that split off that are very spiral, with arms spiraling around. And there you see examples of at the top called SA, SB, and SC spirals. And then you have spirals that have bars through them, all right? Barred spirals, A, B, and C, for different ways that they are. Now, we think that our Milky Way galaxy, if we could go outside of it and look and see its true shape, is more like the SB4, the barred spiral there in the middle on the bottom of this tuning fork, we call it, of the classification scheme of galaxies. But this galaxy classification scheme is still used today, 100 years later, and was quite groundbreaking when we realized, one, there's other galaxies out there. The Milky Way is not the only thing. And two, boy, they are different everywhere we look. And to understand things, we have to categorize them so that we can figure out how these evolved, okay? We think that the elliptical galaxies spawned into either the spiral or the barred spiral. But you know, this is the conjecture, and we may never know for sure. But all this made Hubble quite famous, all right? And here we have a Hubble telescope image, again, showing every image in there is a galaxy. Some are galaxies that are behind some of these other galaxies. And we're not going to get into that, but we know through Einstein, a contemporary of Hubble, that light is bent by gravity. So there's galaxies behind other galaxies that the light's bent and gives these arcs sort of around there. So yes, Hubble and Einstein were very good contemporaries. There they are. Hubble rocking his pipe in the back there. Not sure who has the cap on, but probably one of the other astronomers or engineers of the telescope. And there's the great Albert Einstein looking through a telescope as Hubble looks on. Now, this is not how amateur or real astronomers really do their work. They record the data on different charts and graphs and different ways of doing that in photography, and then go back and analyze those photographic plates or whatever. But of course, looking through and seeing the objects, you can't see as much with a photograph. Still, it's an entrancing thing. So Einstein and Hubble both loved the limelight. They both were right there in Hollywood when they were doing their thing in the Los Angeles area where the Hubble Telescope and the Hooker Telescope are. So both these gentlemen become the personal friends of people like Charlie Chaplin. There is Charlie Chaplin, handsome devil on the left there, and Einstein. What a paradox that Hollywood's most comedic actor is best friends almost with the world's smartest man, and right in there was Edwin Hubble, rubbing arms with Harpo Marx, Helen Hayes, Lillian Gish, even millionaire paper millionaire William Randolph Hearst, and also a great friend was Aldous Huxley, that wrote some great science fiction, including 1984. They were great friends with Hubble and his wife. So quite interesting, the fame that these guys were attracted to. And like I said, Charlie Chaplin in 1910 was Hollywood. He was the #1 guy and had a lot to do with shaping Hollywood back in the day. The whole thing is so much bigger than I am. I can't understand it, so I just trust myself to it and forget about it. So he didn't try to understand it. He just recorded the facts and laid out how he thought the facts evolved into this thing called the universe on there. There is our beautiful Hubble telescope there. One of the upgrade missions there. They've upgraded the solar panels. There's been no plans, as STS-119 was the last Hubble repair mission. It wasn't 119. I'm making a mistake there. 109 was the one that Newman was on there. But the last Hubble mission, 119, I'm pretty sure it is. I'm not going to look it up there. Someone will correct me there. Selvin, anyone have any comments or questions for us on this Hubble Telescope Day?
Well, I just noticed Carson Bailey says he can see in the past, a million years in the past, he wants to see the dinosaurs.
Oh, Carlson wants to go 65 million years in the past and see the dinosaurs. Well, we might go back to one of these planets around these galaxies and there's dinosaurs playing chess or something. I don't know. Or maybe there'll be dinosaurs playing with cats and squirrels, CB. We'll figure that out. But glad that you're watching us today, my friend. As we're coming to an end of another Stay Curious episode here. Hubble also said, equipped with his 5 senses, man explores the universe around him and calls the adventure science. And Hubble always kind of felt like he was in a sandbox. and playing with these telescopes, and the entire universe was the sandbox. And every time you picked up a handful of sand, you never knew what was going to come out of that in a way of scientific investigation and knowledge on there. But always rocking a pipe with a British accent, though a Midwesterner, quite a character, 6'1", an assuming figure, a great conversationalist, friends of Hollywood actors and actresses and famous millionaires around the world. After all, the millionaires want and famous people want to be around the eggheads sometimes there to prove that they've got some smarts in there. So we had a good time during the Hubble 30th anniversary. We were bequeathed, but we actually entered a contest for the Hubble 30th anniversary in 2020. And in April, for the launch of the celebration, we were going to have an event here at the American Space Museum and reveal this cosmic reef, beautiful image of the 30th anniversary, which includes a galaxy, not a galaxy, this is a hotbed of stars being born. And then the blue, which is part of the same image, is where a star blew up. All right, quite a famous image. We had that behind me where my green screen is, and this was our Hubble gallery where our studio was. And we had an astronaut or two maybe that were going to come to our big 30th anniversary of Hubble. Started getting the plans going out in February and March. And, well, we all know what happened in March 2020. Yeah, the world shut down with this horrible COVID-19 pandemic, and we had to cancel all those plans. In fact, we never got the poster that was that we won as a in a contest to be a site to have one. They gave away about 20 of them until I think it was sometime in September or October. We finally got it during the heat of the pandemic there, as the printing company had shut down because of the pandemic. So we didn't get to celebrate it like we wanted it to, but now we're celebrating it as often as we can, particularly on this 34th anniversary of the Hubble Telescope. There's our 30th anniversary label there. Let me go forward there with one final image as we sign out for today and let you know that we are going to celebrate the 35th anniversary of the Hubble Telescope in a big way, as we will celebrate it at Shuttle Fest 4 on April 12th, 2025. And we are already in the planning stages for that to try to effort some serious spacewalking Hubble Telescope astronauts and get a great program together for you, the space lover out there again. So, Selvin, you want to name off some of the people watching today that we're grateful for?
Doug Forrest, Gary Jeriel, Dave Stange, Mark Uziak, Stevie J, Tom Uziak, and Carlton Bailey.
All right. Thank you all for watching today. We know that if you're in the Midwest or Northeast part of our nation, you're warming up and getting ready for springtime and summertime, and we're getting ready for 90 degrees here, quite frankly, though we've had a couple nice pleasant days. We got a launch tonight, in fact, about 6:12 or something in the after here this evening. We've got another noisy rocket taking off about 9 miles from where I'm sitting here with those Starlink satellites. But seriously, we're grateful for every launch. It brings new people into our museum from all over the world that want to see a rocket launch from Kennedy Space Center, and this is the right place to do it. So, well, everybody, we appreciate you watching today. We want to just give another plug that we want. I know you'll be entranced with whatever Kevin Brown has to say about the Delta Clipper, the reusable spaceship of the 1990s that had moonwalking astronaut Pete Conrad as one of its backers on this. And it has a tale of woe. But you know what? It was way ahead of its time, for doggone sure. 30 years ago, this was a reusable spaceship that was going from launch to orbit and coming back down. Does that sound like something? Oh, yeah, the Starship of Elon Musk's. And this was a dream ahead of its time. And Kevin Brown, look forward to you telling us all about that tomorrow. So until tomorrow, thank you, Selvin, for another great job. We didn't mention that Marty's on a well-deserved vacation up in North Carolina enjoying the Blue Ridge Parkway. Marty, hope that you're staying curious with us up there with the grandkids and your family. So until tomorrow, when we're going to talk about the Delta Clipper, I'm Mark Marquette saying I can't wait to see you in our museum to bridge the space between us.